Warning. This show contains mature and intense subject matter, themes, and language. The opinions contained herein are for entertainment purposes only and are not intended to offend, especially during the game at the show's end. All of you who choose to continue, you have been warned, and welcome back.
It's going blue. Momma's going nuts.
Hi, Aim.
Oh, yeah, hi, Amy.
Yes.
Everyone pulled up their hoods during the commercial.
I have no
Not
hood.
me. Yeah,
What
no
is up,
idea.
everybody? Anyway, we have the absolute pleasure to be once again joined by Simon tonight.
Momma, Marty.
The guys that may not have seen the show before, if you like ghost stories and storytelling, this is your guy. Like, definitely. You got a lot on YouTube as well on Ghost Quest TV. That's where I found a lot of your videos. A lot of your stories that you do.
Got a lot of subscribers too.
Yeah. But it is an absolute pleasure to have you back on. So thank you for coming on again tonight.
My absolute pleasure to be back again, of course.
So yeah, every week we obviously dedicate a show. So this week is for Mama Marty's little doggo Belle, who's not very well, unfortunately. So tonight is for Belle.
Thanks, guys.
Hopefully she keep going strong, bless her. Yeah. Apart from that, that's all right. So yeah, Simon, what have you been up to since we last saw you? I mean, it's been a while now since we last saw you on the show.
That's right. Well, I've done a little bit of TV work. I met Jonathan Ross quite recently.
Oh.
He had a series called Ghosts and Legends of Great Britain. And I met him at Lancaster City Castle and took him to the what's called the Well Tower, which is this very, very deep underground dungeon where the Pendlewicks were kept way back in 1612. I also met a lady called Susan Kelman, who has a little camper van that goes all around Great Britain, visiting various areas, etc. So I've been kept quite busy, really, but it's events like this which I really enjoy because this is live, and I love a live audience, and I love to pluck stories from my mind and bring them to the attention of everyone, really.
Yeah, didn't you recently do one at a library as well? You recently.
Yes, I did. I mean, libraries are absolutely ideal for telling stories. And I do have a book called Ghostly Tales of the Unexpected. And it was nice to actually read from that in the library, of course, my local library.
Oh, that's cool.
If we get one of those, can we get them signed by you, Simon?
I would be absolutely honoured. Of course,
Yeah.
I would.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
I know, and as soon as the show is over, I'm spending money.
I have some money I can spend this week, too.
Very good.
You're going to be inundated with the book signings now. So, what's up, guys in the chat? Hope you're all well. There's quite a few of you in tonight. It's good. But yeah, I mean, we've heard obviously a few of your stories from like the last shows and that. Is there any like recent ones that you've come across that are like, in the places that you've been to recently that really stand out to you?
Well, I like eyewitness accounts. I like eyewitness stories, really. And I thought tonight I'd start with a completely different theme. Certainly as a tour guide, I conduct 12 guided ghost walks in the north of England. And a question I get asked an awful lot is there life after death? Do you believe in ghosts? Have you any evidence? Well, I met a young lad quite recently, and I'm going to call him Andrew. He's given me permission to use his story, but perhaps not so much his name. Whenever I see Andrew, he always has a huge smile on his face. And even on a Monday morning, whilst the rest of us are feeling a little bit gloomy, really. And I asked him why. He said, well, Simon, I've died 3 times. I said, really? Tell me about it. Well, we're going to turn the clock back in time now to 2010. And an inn, a lovely old inn in the village of Gisborne in the West Riding of Yorkshire, where Andrew and his best friend James were enjoying a few pints of ale. Now, we all know the dangers of drink driving. and perhaps James didn't really take much notice of this, really. They climbed into their Ford Escort car to drive from the West Riding of Yorkshire into Lancashire on what's called the A59. James took a corner far too fast and hit a tree. The impact was so hard that the engine left its engine mounting and crushed Andrew to the back of the seat, breaking his ankles, his fibulas, his tibia, his pelvis, and his sternum, and actually damaging his heart. Of course, he was knocked unconscious. James was very, very fortunate because the engine came to the side, which saved his life. But the car was badly damaged, and when the fire crews arrived, they had to literally cut the roof open to get them both out. Andrew's body was lifted out after the engine had been hoisted off him by the fire crews and laid down by the side of the car. He was pronounced dead at the scene with terrible, terrible injuries. However, an inquisitive police officer walked over to his body and noticed a bit of a twitch in his left eyelid and shouted, "This lad's still here." An ambulance arrived, and so did a helicopter. The helicopter landed in the field near the A59, and Andrew's body was taken on board. On the journey from Gisborne, West Yorkshire to Blackburn, he had a cardiac arrest. The helicopter pilot decided to change the journey to go to a more complex hospital in the city of Manchester. He had another cardiac arrest and was defibrillated by the crew on board the helicopter. He found himself at Crumpsall Hospital. He was rushed into theatre, and this is where our story really starts. Andrew informed me that he actually watched the operation. His body, he actually left his body and was looking down at his body from the top of the theatre ceiling. He could see his chest wide open with clamps. He could see doctors and nurses working feverishly, particularly on his heart, to literally save the aorta from pumping blood everywhere. He felt completely calm. In fact, he told me he had never felt relaxed and as calm in his life. He looked down and watched the operation. He then saw one of the doctors walk over to the sink by the side of the theatre and take off his rubber gloves, and a nurse took his mask off. And Andrew noted that this man was slightly dark-skinned, had a pencil-thin moustache, and rather large grey eyes. He also heard him talk to the nurse, who took the mask off him, and he heard the words, "Don't worry, we shall be in Ibiza tomorrow." Andrew then heard music, music that he knew very well, music that he loved very much indeed, almost like, dare I say it, Crosby, Stills and Nash. He was going to go towards the music when something stopped. He then re-entered his body. He was put into an induced coma for 3 months. Every day his mother and father would make their way from the West Riding of Yorkshire to Manchester to sit by his bedside. After 3 long months, he opened his eyes. His mother burst into tears. "Andrew, you're back with us." Word spread around the hospital that the boy who'd been so seriously ill had come round. The chief surgeon came rushing up the stairs into the room, the private room where Andrew was laying, and shouted, "Oh, Andrew, we're so glad you're still with us. We nearly lost you." Andrew's face lit up. "Oh, don't worry. I saw the whole operation. You did a marvellous job." "Impossible," said the surgeon. "Andrew, you've been unconscious since you hit the tree in Gisborne." "Oh, no. I watched the operation," said Andrew. "And by the way, how was your holiday in Ibiza?"
Oh, wow.
The surgeon was quite shocked. "Well, that's right. I mean, we did go to Ibiza. The nurse who took the mask off was indeed my wife." Incredible story, but I can assure you, a very true story. So is there life after death? I personally think there could be. And if you were to meet Andrew, you'd see this huge smile on his face. The lad is not frightened to actually die because he nearly got there. There's no two ways about it.
That's crazy.
Amazing.
Goosebumps for that one.
Wow. I love this guy.
Guys,
So
like,
good.
like, I know your pops. If you haven't seen Simon, yeah, that is just like a taste of what he does. Like, it is incredible, your storytelling.
And it's funny, one of the comments that I apologize for cutting you off, Simon, but one of the things that I constantly see, and something I've said since the first time I met you, is like Joanne says Simon really has a voice I could listen to the story and fall asleep to. My father, who did audiobooks, at the bottom he is good, very listenable. You have one of those things, those voices, Simon. I almost bought up like a box of crackers and a thing of orange juice. So after the show, I could ask you to read that, and I would just loop it and fall asleep to it.
It's one of those.
So good.
I want him to read me books every day.
Yeah.
It's like a Morgan Freeman voice.
Yeah, like Morgan Freeman or like David Attenborough or something. You've got one of those voices that's very
commanding.
Yes.
And
it's very listenable.
It's passionate. And everything. It's every time you tell a story, Simon, even though I know you've told it many, many times, it's like you're telling it for the first time. And it's just you are such a talented gentleman, man.
That story though,
hang on to like every word.
Thank you very, very much indeed.
Yeah, that story though. I mean, that's not the first time I've
Very
heard
good.
about that.
Can I continue with the theme, Tom?
Of course you can. Yeah, definitely go for it.
Very good. So, the question is there life after death? Well, in Andrew's case, he certainly feels there really is. But a very, very strange thing happened to me in 2005. Something which will happen to all of us, of course, and everyone watching and listening, of course. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was watching the television and the telephone rang. My wife picked up the telephone, and I could see by the expression on her face that she was very, very concerned. Something very, very serious was taking place. She sat down next to me and told me that my brother's wife had just informed her that my brother had died that morning of a heart attack. Of course, when you lose a loved one, you're shocked. In my case, it took a good 3 days to actually absorb the information. I was quite deeply upset, as of course anyone would be, to lose a loved one. And I was quite close to my brother. He was only 2 years old when he died. Now, I knew that the funeral would take place in a little church in the Lake District called St. Peter's in the village of Havisham. That's where I went to school. My brother went there as well. My father is buried in the same cemetery. And I knew that my brother would also be going in the same grave. Something made me go to the church 3 days before the actual funeral. I don't know what it was, but I just felt compelled that I had to go. When I got to the church, it was a Wednesday morning. It was around 9:30 in the morning, and that church is never, ever locked. I walked in, and of course, memories came flooding back of my childhood, the primary school I went to, and the many services that I went to at primary school. And of course, I thought of my brother. I sat down in a pew and had a few silent thoughts. And then I heard the sound of voices. And these two elderly ladies came from nowhere. They just seemed to appear. They had very, very pleasant smiles on their faces and seemed to be very, very courteous people, really. And they said, "Excuse me, can we help you?" I explained why I was there. I explained that my brother had died and the funeral was going to take place in 3 days' time. And these two women, they had smiles on their faces, and they sat on either side of me, and they said, "Can we pray for you?" I thought, well, yes, of course. I closed my eyes, and both women did the same thing. They put their hands together and started praying to the good Lord. All of a sudden, I felt a hand on my forehead, and I could feel the curvature of the actual palm. It was almost as if it was a hand that I recognized. I naturally thought it's one of these ladies sitting next to me. I opened my eyes, and they both had their hands clasped together. I then recognized that hand as being my brother's. It was exactly the same. I could feel it. It was the same size, the same shape, and I just knew it was my brother's hand. The two ladies then stood up and wished me well, and I left the church feeling quite happy. It was almost as if my brother had got in contact with me to say, "I'm okay." But as I walked just the short distance from the pew to the church door, I turned round. There was no one there. There was no one there. The two ladies had just literally vanished. I got back to my hometown, and as it happened, I did know one of the local clergymen, a marvellous chap called Stephen. And I just mentioned the story, and he laughed. Oh, Simon, those two women, those two elderly ladies, they were angels. I thought, my goodness me, that explains why they just literally disappeared. So we've heard Andrew's story about going to the music. We've heard my brother's story from the other side. So yes, I do believe there is another life after this one.
I think that's, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, like, yeah, you don't need much more proof, really, do you? And I think that's the best bits you can get as well, is like the personal proof, things like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, like the first-hand account.
Yeah.
It certainly changed my attitude towards it. It really did. I mean, as I say, I felt the hand, and I don't think there's anything to fear about death. I personally don't think there's, from those two different accounts, anyway.
Yeah, and definitely. Sorry, Hefty,
It's interesting.
No, there's a excuse me, my voice is going in and out. But there's a Twilight Zone episode with Robert. I believe it was Robert Redford. He played a policeman, and there was this old woman who refused to leave her home, even though it was
This episode.
it was like going to be condemned or something like that, and she feared going outside because she was super scared of death, and there was like a robbery outside. A policeman got shot. Against her better judgment, she takes the policeman in, being again played by Robert Redford, and they go through this whole thing where she explains to him how she's seen Mr. Death, and he has a face. You know, sometimes he's this person, sometimes he's this person. But so the end twist is that the cop was actually Mr. Death, and as he goes to take her hand to lead her out of the mortal coil, he says, "See, what you thought would come as an explosion, comes as a whisper." And it's like, I think the scariest part of dying is thinking about dying and not actually doing it. Simon, sorry to cut on your time. I'm going to turn my mic back off because I love hearing you talk.
Definitely true though. That
Thank you very much.
The personal bit is like, for myself, is I've mentioned many times to these guys, is what Kerry did for me with reading when I lost my mum, and she did the reading, and it's just, as soon as she started speaking to me, because she did, you recorded, didn't you, Kerry, and then you sent it to me, and as soon as Kerry started speaking about certain things, I knew instantly that it was my mum who was talking to her. And it makes you realize there isn't anything to fear when you die. It's just another part of life as such. You're just going to the next stage sort of thing.
Just to mention,
continuing the journey.
Yeah.
I don't think he does do audio books.
Yes, you don't do audiobooks, do you, Simon?
I would like to, but it's really a case of having the technology, really. I've got many stories on YouTube, of course, Tales from the Graves, and indeed Tales from the Darkness, but it would be lovely to do an actual audio book. But it's getting around, it's actually knowing the technological way of doing it.
I will help. I will help.
Please help.
I will help, please. Yes.
I think definitely, if you could get your voice on audio and
Simon, if I may, after the show, I'll get you my information for my email. I would love to get in contact with you about.
Thank you very much.
No, please. If that's cool with you, I'd love to do that.
Yeah. And guys, if you just search on YouTube, you just search like Tales from the Darkness or Tales from the Graves, and all Simon's videos will come up, and you can see them all and on his channel. And then if you just go on Amazon, I'll show you. So this is Simon's book on Amazon. Ghostly Tales Unexpected. You literally just search that on Amazon, or search just Simon Entwistle, and it'll come up. And definitely buy it. Definitely.
Joanne's going to definitely buy audio.
Joanne's a lady I work with from work, and she's seen your previous shows with you, and we were talking about it today when I was at work. And she does love watching you that.
I'm actually bummed Tuna is missing this. Tuna loves Simon.
Yeah.
And this is actually the first Simon show that Tuna's missed. We don't know whatever happened to Tuna. I think he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone now. But But please don't let us stop your flow.
Yeah, please. Yeah, my mic's going off.
Very good. Our next story, we're going to turn the clock back in time to 1916 and the beautiful city of Carlisle, which is on the Scottish border. This is a story from a hospital where in World War One, Allied soldiers and indeed German POWs were sent there for treatment, etc. And of course, a lot of Commonwealth soldiers were sent there. One of them was actually a sergeant in the Royal Light Horse Regiment of the Australian Armed Forces. It was called Sergeant John Cree, and John had been very, very badly wounded at a place called Gallipoli. He had shrapnel in his back. He was stretchered off the battlefield to a hospital ship and then found himself on a train in England. He had to lie in his front because his back was so sore. He had quite a few operations to remove bits of metal from his back, etc. But his dressings had to be dressed every single day. He found himself at the military hospital in Carlisle. He was given a private room, and staff nurse, the name of staff nurse Jane Gill, took a shine to him. She was 21 years of age, a very, very attractive young lady, and much as she tried, she couldn't help but feel affection for the Australian sergeant. She would dress his wounds every morning and every night, and she went above and beyond the normal duty of a nurse by going back at night time and reading stories to him to keep him entertained. She got to know him very, very well, and as much as she tried, she couldn't help. She was actually falling in love with him. One night, she dressed his wounds as she had done on many occasions, went back to the staff room, and came back again to see an elderly gentleman sitting at the end of the bed. He was an elderly gentleman with a long white beard, little round glasses, and was sitting at the end of the sergeant's bed. She went, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realise you had visitors." She went back to the staff room, and the staff in the staff room, the matron said, "Have you been dressing the sergeant's wounds?" "Well, I will do, but he's got a visitor." "What?" said the matron. "It's 8 o'clock. No visitors allowed at this time. Let's go back and see." When they went back to the room, they opened the door and found no one in the room apart from the sergeant, who had just died. She had the unpleasant job of washing his body, preparing it for burial, and she also had the unpleasant job of looking through his belongings. She found a wallet, an Australian Army wallet, and also his paybook. As she opened the paybook, a photograph fell out of the paybook and landed at her feet. She bent down and she realized she was looking at the photograph of the elderly man who'd been sitting at the end of the sergeant's bed that very evening. Apparently it was his father. It seemed that his father had come to collect him, to take him to the next world.
Wow.
That is crazy. I'm just so surprised how you remember all these.
Amazing.
Like, I read like a
seriously,
chapter
like it's like a vault up there.
I like the idea that there's a family member there to help you cross over. I feel that a familiar face would probably be a lot more comforting and would probably help you ease into that transition a lot more or easier. That's a lot. I'm taking a lot of comforting shit over this out of this, Simon.
That is a lot.
This is really good.
Yeah.
I do think it's the passion that you said that's what makes it. I think that's what makes you remember it, because you have a passion for it, and it's what makes it so
captivating.
Yeah, captivating. Yeah. It's people listen because of
very captivating.
Yeah, it's incredible. Flog and C, good to see you. Yeah, did you have a question? I thought he was going to ask something. Sorry.
No, sorry.
Would you like another story, folks?
Yes, please.
Of course.
My mic's going on. My mic.
Very good.
We want all
we'll continue
stories.
with this. We'll continue with the same theme, really. And we're going to make our way now to 1907 and a family called the Mercers. John and Edith Mercer had just got married at the age of 45. It does happen sometimes. But the last thing Edith expected was to conceive, and she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. This boy was looked on as a gift from the gods and showered in love, warmth, and affection. Sadly, just after his 3rd birthday, he contracted what we call scarlet fever. Nowadays, of course, scarlet fever can be treated with antibiotics, but in those days, they didn't exist. And the poor lad passed away, breaking his mother and father's hearts. We now pick up the story 25 years later, when the local window cleaner, a gentleman called Mr. John Gorham, arrived on the scene and started to clean the windows. In the corner of the upstairs bedroom window he was cleaning, he saw a little boy with a sailor suit on, smiling and waving at him. Of course, Gorham waved back. He saw him every day for the next 3 weeks and thought, that's strange. That little boy is not getting any bigger. But also, that little boy is always wearing the same clothes. He knocked on the next door neighbour's house, a lady called Mrs. Jefferson, and she said, oh, no, Mr. Gorham, no. The Mercers did have a little boy, but he died a good quarter of a century ago. He then plucked the courage and knocked on Mrs. Mercer's door. Mrs. Mercer opened the door, and Gorham said, Mrs. Mercer, I have no wish to upset you, and please forgive me if I do. But every time I clean the windows upstairs, there's always a little boy there. He always waves and smiles at me. A huge smile came across her face. Oh, Mr. Gorham, don't you worry. Don't you worry. It's my little boy. He's never left me, you know.
That's awesome.
That's so sweet.
I refuse to give anybody the satisfaction on this show of seeing me cry, unless it's in Polos.
It is
That's
incredible.
a beautiful story.
Definitely.
Your stories are amazing.
Affairs of the heart are quite touching, aren't they, really? And one place I really thoroughly enjoy visiting as a tour guide is this gorgeous 1322 building called Samlesbury Hall. You will find Samlesbury Hall on the internet, and also on my YouTube channel. There's lots of stories relating to it. One story that really does capture the attention of so many people is the story of Lady Dorothea Southworth. Who was she? Well, she lived at Samlesbury Hall way back in 1546. By all accounts, she was a very bonny young lady, a very attractive young lady. On a lovely May morning, she woke up, she opened the curtains of Samlesbury Hall, and she looked into the grounds, the manicured grounds beneath the window. There she got dressed very quickly. She walked across the beautiful lawns, over the moat, and into the forest. There she came across a handsome young lad of the name of D. Horton from nearby Horton Towers, an equally gorgeous building. So boy meets girl, girl meets boy, landowner meets landowner. It's almost like a relationship made in heaven. But a huge problem for Lady Dorothea when she told her mother and father, we are Catholics, they're Protestants. You will never, ever see him again. If you do, I'll have you banished. You will live with the nuns in the south of France. We're Catholics. They're Protestants. He will never, ever have my permission to take your hand in marriage. You will never see him again. If anything, this threat seemed to fuel their love. And in the dead of night, she would leave her bed, make her way across the lawns and over the moat and into the forest. Her father warned her again. If you continue with this relationship, I promise you, I'll have you sent to Marseille in the south of France. You will live with the nuns and the nun. We are Catholics, they are Protestants. You will never bring dishonour on this Catholic family. He then told her 2 brothers, tonight, boys, do what's necessary. On a beautiful moonlit night, Dorothea left her bed. She tiptoed past what she thought were her sleeping brothers, what she thought were her sleeping parents. She made her way across the lawns, over the moat, towards the forest. And there, illuminated in bright moonlight, was young D. Horton. When he saw her, he very politely bowed. He knelt down and affectionately kissed her hand. He reached into his pocket and produced a huge engagement ring. Oh, Dorothea, will you end this heartache and become my wife? A huge smile came across her face. She gratefully accepted the proposal of marriage, knowing full well that her family would ostracize her. They hugged each other on the fringe of the forest in the bright moonlight, and then they heard shouting and swearing, and out of the forest appeared Dorothea's two brothers, both armed with two very sharp knives. They cruelly, maliciously murdered young de Horton right in front of her. Dorothea's heart was snapped in two. The tears streamed down her cheeks. She almost yelped in pain. As she was dragged back into the hall, she was placed into house arrest, and the following morning she made the long journey to Marseille in the south of France to live with the nuns. On arriving there, she never ate again, she never slept again, and she died literally of a broken heart. That's when the famous sightings of the White Lady of Salisbury have taken place since 1546. If you make way to the hall to this very day, you can buy volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the White Lady sightings. So therefore, I'm going to use just 2 stories relating to them. And we'll turn the clock back in time now to 1879. At that period of time, in the Lancashire cotton towns, we had what's called strike action. And all the cotton workers were on strike, and a lot of them would drink very heavily, and there's quite a few alcohol-related riots. As a result, the army were called in, and the regiment chosen to look after that part of the world was the 24th Regiment of Foot, the South Wales Borderers. Just the senior officers were billeted at Salisbury Hall, just the senior officers. Lieutenant Colonel John Pauline of the South Wales Regiment toasted the regiment. Right, gentlemen, we shall retire for the night. He climbed into his bunk, fell into a deep sleep, but in the early hours of the morning was woken by sobbing. That's strange. Not one of my men. Sounds like a female to me. He got dressed very quickly. He opened the curtains and looked into the grounds of Salisbury Hall. There, in between the horse chestnut tree and the yew tree, he could make out a female figure with a long white gown that looked to be deeply distressed. Of course, being an officer and a gentleman, he rushed across the lawns and shouted, "Ma'am, ma'am, may I be of assistance to you, ma'am?" The figure slowly turned. Where there should have been a face was a hollow, dark cavity. The colonel screamed. He was no coward. He'd taken the life of many a Russian soldier in the Crimean Wars, but came rushing back in the building and searched for his British Army regulation hip flask and consumed the contents. The following morning, he had breakfast with the Harrison family who owned the hall at that period of time, and they laughed. "Oh, Colonel, don't worry. You've seen the White Lady, Lady Dorothea. She's been with us since 1546. The Colonel had no idea. He was going to meet her personally. His regiment, the 24th, was sent overseas, where they joined Lord Chelmsford's ill-fated No. 3 column and invaded Zululand. There on the 22nd of January, 1879, beneath a rocky outcrop in Natal State, South Africa, called Isandwana, King Katsue, the Zulu king, unleashed his Zulu impus. These men were like gladiators, stabbing spears called assegais, and they swamped the British ranks, and they wiped out the entire 24th Regiment. The colonel apparently formed a square with the remnants of his brigade and was heard to say, "I shall toast the White Lady this day," before he succumbed to the Zulu assegai. In 1926, an answer was found to all these sightings of the White Lady. The road next to the hall was widened to take more heavier traffic, and they put what's called a herringbone drainage system across the lawns. One of those drainage ditches, went in between the horse chestnut and the yew tree, and they found the foot of an adult skeleton. Blackburn CID, the Criminal Investigation Department, were brought in, and they removed a lot more soil from the grave, and the sergeant in charge of the excavation said, "Definitely a murder, but I don't think we'll catch the culprit. This lad's been here for at least 500 years. Some more soil was taken from the grave, and they found on one of the fingers a beautiful, beautiful ring. It was taken off, carefully cleaned and inspected, and inside it had the words Dorothea, de Horton. It was none other than young D. Horton, who'd been murdered by the two Southwark boys all those years ago and buried in the grounds of Samlesbury Hall. And that would explain why the White Lady of Samlesbury will go to the grave of the only boy that ever showed her any love, any warmth, and any affection. The White Lady of Samlesbury is definitely a star. She's the most famous ghost to haunt that part of Lancashire. And I spent many, many hours in the early hours of the morning with film crews from across the world who've all been trying to find her. But it is indeed a very sad story, but also a very true story about how a Catholic girl fell in love with a Protestant boy, and he paid and she paid with their lives.
That's crazy.
More, please.
All the stories.
That is one place
More,
we want to go
please.
visit.
Hefty, you look really scary in the dark.
Yeah, he's just
I
chilling
realized
there.
I wanted to turn the chat off because it was bringing extra light, and I'm just like, if we're doing like story time with Simon, man, I'm like,
This is the best times though. Like,
I want this is I mean, come on,
great.
like it's this is fantastic.
it's
Like,
so
yeah.
relaxing just listening to you telling me.
Mhm.
Not only that, but like there's so much to take out of these stories. I feel like they're like. It's really crazy because you can hear the story, but I think ultimately a story is worth only what you take out of it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like the person can do like the best job telling it, which Simon, you do. But you know, as long as it can be presented to you in the awesomest way, but it's ultimately what you get from it that makes the story as powerful as I guess it's subjective at that point, as far as like people say. But I love it. I like more. Again, my mic is going off. That's all I have to.
Very good.
More, please. More, please.
This is a truly fabulous story from a place called Townley Hall, which is near Burnley, and it does have a very, very strong American and Canadian connection, really. First of all, we're going to turn the clock back to the 25th of October, 1773, and the marriage of a British Army officer called Lieutenant John Creasap to Jeannie Bradall at Townley Hall. It was a fabulous wedding. They made their way to the main hall, had a wedding breakfast. But the lieutenant, being a serving British Army officer, he was sent overseas. He could take his wife with him, being an officer, and they were sent to Philadelphia, to the garrison at Philadelphia. From Philadelphia, they were sent to British Army headquarters north, Boston, New England. His wife absolutely loved New England, and she said, "Oh, John, why don't you resign your commission and become a civilian? This is the land of opportunity." "I will. I'm sick of the army," said John. And they settled in what we now call New England. They started their own business, were doing extremely well, and their next door neighbours were doing extremely well. One person who recognised this more than anyone else was good old King George back in England. And he thought, these people need taxing, and taxing, and taxing again. John said to his wife one day, "I'm working my socks off, and all I'm doing is paying tax back to the King in England." He then met another Northern Englishman like himself of the name of George Washington, who came from the little village of Yelland Redmayne in North Lancashire. And Washington said to John, "John, I believe you served in the British Army. I'd like to know all about British Army infantry tactics, because I'd like to form a rebel army and throw the British administration out of North America. This country needs to be independent. Will you join me?" "I will join you. I'm sick and tired of this taxation. It's got beyond a joke." So therefore, John Creasap became what's called a Pathfinder General. He was at Lexington, Concord, Bunker Hill, Ticonderoga, and the final surrender at Yorktown, where the American rebels and the French army amalgamated and the British surrendered. Now the Brits had gone, Creasap was summoned to Washington's headquarters. Of course, George Washington became the very, very first president, what we now call the United States of America. "Ah, John, I'd like to offer you a position in the new United States Armed Forces as a general. Will you take this up? I will, sir. My mission for you is to encourage the natives to leave New Hampshire, New Jersey, New England. Will you do this? I will, sir. I think it's fair to say that Creasap had the blood of many an innocent score and many an innocent brave in his hands, but all good things come to an end. When he was captured by the Huron, North American Canadian Indians, and just like John Wayne in a famous Western movie, he was tied to the totem pole, all his men dispatched, and he was ordered to be given the death of 1,000 cuts. Now, John Creasap was a Yorkshireman. Yorkshire folk are renowned for being rather stubborn. In fact, Sir Ranulph Fiennes will take no one from Yorkshire on any of his tours because they like to whinge and complain about everything. Creasap was no different. He was tied to the totem pole and ordered to be given the death of 1,000 cuts. He showed no emotion whatsoever, none whatsoever. And the Indians became frightened of him because they realized he wasn't even frightened to die. They released his bonds. He rushed into the forest and got back to Washington's headquarters. Sir, I've had enough of this, sir. I'd like to return to my native Craven in West Yorkshire, sir. Washington was horrified. John, my country is indebted to you. You will always be an American citizen. But he made his way back to his native Yorkshire. He died at the age of 74. He's buried at a place called Elsack in the West Riding of Yorkshire, an area which people call the Craven district of Yorkshire. Every 4th of July, a member of the American Embassy will make his or her way up to Elsack to make sure the grave is being polished, some fresh flowers placed on the grave. And his inscription is quite proud, really. It proudly says, General John Creasap, United States Armed Forces. He is the all-American, all-Yorkshire hero. And in 1952, the Pentagon actually bought the grave itself. It's classed as official American soil. The spooky side to the story, and there is indeed a spooky side, is that they say Creasap's ghost actually haunts Townley Hall. He has been seen by 1 or 2 mediums wearing a red coat and in some cases a blue coat of the American Armed Forces. A most amazing, also a very true story.
That's incredible. Yeah, one for you Americans, that one. That's...
Wait, more, please. Wait, can we bring up Rob?
The poor guy.
Can we bring up Rob's comment?
Okay,
Don't forget
Rob's comment. Which one's that?
Don't forget to Will Smith that like button, everyone. I think that is.
I just noticed everybody in the chat is like Danny is a great storyteller. I know Josh, you was putting one on there. He said, wrong one. It's amazing storyteller. It's amazing how you almost feel like you're there. You're world building. That's the very good way of saying it. You do
What
build.
do you do, buy a piece?
Like, right? You feel like you're that person he's talking about. Like, you're going through all of that stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't suppose, Simon, that you have any stories that are from abroad, like Germany or Transylvania or anywhere like that. Is there any story that you have where you've visited before?
It's going to show.
That's a good shout.
Yes, I have indeed. I've got one from the Somme battlefield in France.
Oh, I love that, yeah.
Real quick, I'm sorry, Simon. Just to interject, Matt says that one didn't even need a spooky side. I was fascinated with the history alone, which again is one of those things. Like, just supernatural. Like, a lot of these stories have to deal with a lot of factual things that happen, and a lot of
very much so. Yeah.
You know, which again lends to a lot of the credibility and just the like Josh said, the world building. It's incredible. And with that being said, my mic is going off, so I can hear more.
More stories. Very
good. Amy's just asked me about a story from abroad. This is very much a military story, and at the end of the broadcast, viewers, if they want to, can go into YouTube and just put the Lancashire Fusiliers Sunken Lane. The Sunken Lane is a natural dip on the Somme battlefield. And we are going to turn the clock back in time now to the 1st of July, 1916. It is a spooky story, but it's also historical as well. Now, that was the start of what we call the Somme Offensive, which involved 92,000 British troops. The whole idea was to get the miners to dig underneath the German trenches and create a huge underground cavern and fill it with TNT, and then press the charger and blow a huge hole in the German defences, and then the British forces would then catch the crater and get behind the German trenches. Now, they wanted to film the whole thing, and after tonight's broadcast, you can actually watch that very, very film. A gentleman called Geoffrey Malins. Malins was an early film pioneer. He had, of course, a camera with a hand crank, and he was given a platoon of Lancashire Fusiliers, quite a famous infantry regiment, and it was their job, this platoon of some 48 men, to look after him, to actually look after him, take him to the sunken lane and get him back again, because that film was so precious and had to be looked at by the generals. So Geoffrey Malins was 36 years of age, and they set off in the pitch darkness to get to the sunken lane. His job, of course, was to film the huge underground explosion. At exactly 7:30 on the 1st of July 1916, he made his way to the top of the sunken lane and got the camera lens over the rim and started to film. There was this huge underground explosion, which was a bit like a volcano. You can watch this later on if you want. And the whole of the trench system just seems to blow into the air as thousands of tons of TNT are exploding. He then turns the camera on the Fusiliers in the sunken lane. It's crystal clear, although it's black and white film, it's crystal clear. It's been watched by many, many people, but Scotland Yard and MI5, of course, they have surveillance teams, and some of those surveillance teams are lip readers. And they brought in a young lady who works for Scotland Yard to actually lip read what the soldiers were saying, because it's so clear. Some of them are mentioning, "This day my wife will be a widower." Another man is heard talking about his son. "I won't see my lad ever again, he's only 4 years old." Very, very touching words, which actually upset the lip reader, this young girl who works for Scotland Yard. What is so terribly, terribly sad about this whole story is the Somme offensive was a complete disaster. The British weren't fast enough to capture the crater. The Germans were pretty quick to react, and they filled the crater with their own troops. So when the British soldiers got there, they were mown down in their thousands. 28,000 young men lost their lives that day, including all the boys that had been filmed by Geoffrey Malins in the trench itself. He got back to his own lines, and the film, The Sunken Lane, Lancashire Fusiliers, is one of the most famous films ever to come off the First World War battlefields. You will find it on YouTube, but I think of that young girl who worked for MI5 and Scotland Yard as she watched the film and she brought those people's words to life. Very, very touching. I have been to the Sunken Lane on a few occasions myself, and I had the great pleasure of being there by myself one night. And as I walked down the Sunken Lane, you can imagine it's like a limestone outcrop. You've got hedges on one side and trees on the other side, and it would be an ideal place to shelter from being shelled or shot at. But I'm sure as I walked down that lane, I heard the words, "Wie geht's, meine Herren? Bist du glücklich?" which is obviously German. Hello, how are you? Are you happy? As I turned round, there was no one there, but many a British, many a German, many a Canadian, Australian, New Zealand, and American soldier has died in the Sunken Lane.
Thank you for that one.
I remember actually seeing that. I mean, yeah, you guys just search Sunken Lane on YouTube. It'll come up. It's only like a minute long video, but I remember watching that first time when I was in history when I was at school, and it is a very. I think if there ever is a bit of footage that will sum up the World War I, it's certainly that piece. Like I say, like every young boy you see there, all of them, after the camera shot off a few seconds later, all of them had died.
What I do like with all the videos,
it's very touching.
What I do like with all the videos that do at the moment is they're actually turning the black and white videos now into colour, so it's more personable. It gives more life to the actual video itself.
And they're doing those voices, like you said, they're doing those voiceovers now. Recreating the whole scene. You can hear everything, see everything in colour as it was then, and
that's amazing.
When you do hear like that, when they hear the things that they said and stuff, it's very moving. And I bet it's an incredibly powerful place to go. Like you say, you've been there.
Very, very much so. The Somme battlefield, you're looking at around 3.5 million people lost their lives there. So it will be very, very active with the spirits of both enemy and foe, really. We've just seen that film, All Quiet on the Western Front. Yes. I think it was just as tough for the Germans as it was for the Allies. Yeah. But as is always the case, innocent people sadly lose their lives in war. I recently saw the film Midway. And when you look at the United States Navy in World War II, they took on the might of the Japanese Navy. But in one day, the United States Air Corps, operating from the carriers, sunk the entire Japanese carrier force. And what I thought was, it was actually quite horrifying in the film, and it was depicted, and quite true. Quite a few of these American air crews had bailed out. Some had ditched, and a few of them were taken on board Japanese warships. And what the Japanese did to them was quite disgraceful, really. 3 of them had their hands tied together with a long piece of rope attached to an anchor, and they threw the anchor over the side. And these poor lads, only 19, 20, 21 years of age, were dragged to the bottom of the ocean. You can only imagine the horror they must have gone through. But without their sacrifice, we would not be here today. There's no two ways around it.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
There was this is scarily similar. There was a show, Power Rangers, if anybody remembers that show.
Yep.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So I want to say it was the Red Power Ranger. He's in prison for basically doing the same thing. As far as so he went to go buy a yacht off this couple, and wanted to take it for a test drive. The couple went out with him to sea, and he basically did that same thing. He tied them to the anchor and whoop, sank them, and they ended up catching them and stuff like that. Yeah, it's insane. But there's so many parallels. I don't want to keep cutting in, but I'm seeing so many parallels and a lot of stories that you're telling that it's
amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, my mic's going off.
Okie dokie.
I think we've got time for one more story, maybe.
Yeah, I think
very good. Very good.
Yeah, definitely. Let's have another one.
Only if you want to.
Okie dokie.
I would literally put up my paycheck this week for this show to get this into overtime.
You all owe me for this one.
Every cent of it.
Well, we're going to turn the clock back in time now to 1874. And the story of John T. Martindale. His story is quite unique. John T., his job is to go to the city of Liverpool and watch the ships come in from Louisiana, Mississippi, and Egypt. Those ships are full of cotton. His job is to go to the warehouses in Liverpool and buy the bales of cotton and then distribute them to what we call the textile barons of Lancashire and Yorkshire. His coach arrived in the market town of Clitheroe on a bitterly cold December day, 1874. He made his way to the Shaw residence. The Shaw family were textile barons, very, very wealthy people. It was so cold inside the coach, his coat had nearly frozen to his body. He left the coach, went to the Shaw residence, and felt the rays of heat from the fire. Mrs. Shaw was there. "Oh, Jonty, have you got some good quality cotton for me?" "I have. I've got some good Louisiana, some really good Mississippi, and quality Egyptian." "Jonty, you're looking a little bit jaded. What's the problem?" "Well, I'm a bit worried about my wife. She's expecting our first child, and I told her when she gives birth, I shall be by her side." "Oh, don't worry, Jonty. I'll fill in your order book very, very quickly. Your coach and horses have gone round the back of the building to my stables, and my groomsmen are feeding and watering your horses as we talk. You'll be on your way very, very quickly. He consumed his meal very, very quickly and had a glass of punch. He then started to look out of the windows. Where's that coach? I've got to get home. My wife could give birth at any minute. It became dark. As he looked out of the windows, he saw 6 horses and a coach. Ah, that's my coach. He could see the words Lancaster and Manchester on the side of the coach. He left at great speed. He climbed into the coach and sat down. Inside, it smelt damp. It smelt very, very musty. As his eyes became accustomed to the light, he realised that in there with him were 2 other people. One was a lady sitting next to him, with a head bowed down, with a face disguised by a Victorian bonnet. Right in front of him, another woman with her head disguised by a Victorian bonnet, but with a baby on her lap, wrapped in a blanket. Inside the coach, it smelt damp. It smelt musty. It wasn't very pleasant. Jonty made a request. Excuse me, ladies, would you mind if you just open the window, please? No answer. The coach juddered forward. He then made another request. Ladies, would you mind if I open the window, please? No answer. The coach got to the town centre when he made a third and final request. Would you mind if I open the window, please? No answer. He stood up and reached for the leather strap, attached the window frame to pull the window down to let some fresh air into the coach. To his horror, the whole window frame was rotten and came away in his hand. He then heard a scream that went straight through him. The lady next to him had lifted her face, and where there should have been a face was a hollow, dark cavity. Jonty screamed in terror. He fell out of the coach, banged his head, and was knocked unconscious. He came round on the pavement some 5-10 minutes later with a rather nasty head wound. He got up in a swirling blizzard. He trudged back to the Shaw residence. When he got to the front door, there was Mrs. Shaw. Jonty, let me dress that wound. Where have you been? Well, I got in the coach. This woman, she had no face. This woman, she had a baby. Jonty, calm down. Calm down. Your coach is round the back of the building. Your horses are still being fed and watered. And if you look outside, the snow is so deep and so thick that any coach that arrived would have definitely left an imprint. He'd been seeing things. Jonty spent the night there. The following morning, he got back to his wife at Bromley Cross Bolton just in time to witness the birth of his baby daughter. However, he did some research, and apparently the Lancaster-Manchester did leave the Shaw residence in 1871. It never got to its destination, which was Preston. To get from that destination to Preston, you had to go to a place called Jeffrey Hill, where there's a ravine on either side, and a gust of wind caught the Lancaster-Manchester. It blew it down the ravine, killing 6 horses, a driver, an elderly lady, and a young woman with a baby. It seems that Jonty that day got into a coach from the other side.
Whoa.
That was awesome.
That's amazing.
It's a good one.
Wow.
That was an excellent one to end on. That's crazy. Wow.
Thank you very much indeed, folks. Thank you.
That was
Thank you,
wonderful.
Simon. Thank
That was
you.
really good.
Wow.
Been my pleasure. Been my pleasure, folks. I can assure you it has.
Can you come back again, please?
As many times as you want. I love this.
I'd be honoured to.
Amazing.
And, I mean, it's really nice to be able to do this live because just occasionally, with some of the your colleagues in North America, I've had to get up at 3 a.m. to do this, and so this is
We
a lot
appreciate
more
you.
civilized.
That's rough.
No, we appreciate it. No,
We're not that cruel.
But,
We're not that
but
cruel.
again,
We appreciate you.
He'll do it. He'll do it. Simon will do it, and it's that's one of the things. And I'm just I've been watching like Simon's background from like when we started the show, and it was very bright, and Simon was kind of set back from the camera, and as the stories went on and on, the lights somehow got dimmer to all the way off, and Simon is now there, and I never noticed, and it was just so engaging and enthralling. I'm just like,
You do.
Simon, yes, you are Simon,
And you learn so much from them too.
Yeah, anytime. It's not my channel, but please come back anytime you want.
Can I ask a question?
Go on, Kerry.
Are you doing it? Are you doing tours in person still, Simon? If so, where can people find you?
Right. I do quite a few tours at Salisbury Hall, the building I mentioned. Townley Hall, Brusham Hall, Gawthorpe Hall. But I do a lot of coach tours where I sit in the front of the coach with a microphone. And as we go through various areas, I bring the stories from those areas to life, really. And I think every tour guide will tell you they're all storytellers. But I never, ever cease to get amazed by brand new stories, really. And tomorrow I'll probably find quite a few more, really. So it would be nice to come back again. But I'm very...
Yes, we'd love to have you. You're awesome.
There's some great company tonight. And I really,
seriously, this was amazing.
Really do appreciate your kind comments. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Even some of the guys in the chat
No,
here,
thank
just some
you,
of the
seriously.
comments. Just there's awesome stories to Entwistle. There's just loads. All these guys. As Hefty was saying, like before we came on, this is the quietest you will ever see the chat.
Yeah,
and
the chat comes to a stop. My microphone
chat
never goes off.
Stop.
My
All
microphone
they've
never
said about
goes off.
is
on
war
shows.
movies. That is it. Literally, it's just stop. And that just shows. I think we said this before. It shows you how captivating you are.
Yeah, engaging. Yeah.
It was. I think it was the last
Very
show Simon
engaging.
was on last year when I was on my way to South Carolina when y'all had Simon on, so I wasn't there for the show, but I was watching it, and it was funny. Like it's always funny watching this show from like not a co-host perspective, from like a viewer's point of view. Not to toot our own horn, but not only are we super entertaining, but when Simon is on. So in between when there's like idle banter going on, like, you know, things are going, but as soon as Simon starts talking, you go from like this much chat to that much chat to that much chat, and then there's nothing. And that is, I think, the highest respect that can be paid to such a talented storyteller. It's like, you can shut our show up. That's fucking amazing.
Obviously, you do a lot of non-fiction stories. Do you ever do any fiction stories, ones that you've made up?
Well, yes, some stories. I've got some of my own ghost stories, stories that I'd like to come to life. Really, one's actually very, very short. Have I got time, Tom?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
This has come entirely from my own imagination.
Okay.
Who knows? It could happen. It may happen, and it may have already happened. Stuart Vickering found himself walking around Accrington town centre in the early hours of the morning. He didn't know how he got there. He didn't know why he was there. And he didn't understand the clothing he was wearing, which seemed to be almost like a plastic cape, really. He knew one thing. He had to get back home. He lived in Accrington. He made his way across the town centre to the taxi rank, where he saw a taxi by itself. As he got towards the taxi, he saw the taxi driver was reading a newspaper, and he tapped on the window. The taxi driver brought the paper down towards his lap, turned, and screamed in terror. He reached the first gear, the second gear, and left the taxi rank in a pool of blue smoke, as he couldn't wait to get away from the area. Stuart was quite shocked. He knew one thing. He had to get home. He seemed to walk right across the town centre, down the back alleys towards his home in Accrington, and he noticed that he had no socks and shoes on, but couldn't feel any cold whatsoever. He finally got to his home, number 21 Griffin Street, in the town. It was around 4 o'clock as he heard the town hall clock chime 4 times. He then knocked on the door. The door opened, and there was his wife, but she screamed. There was also a strange man standing next to her. He said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" "I'll tell you what's wrong. You died 6 years ago."
That was a good one.
Oh, that's great. That's one of those.
Even though that was made up, I still had the whole world in my mind.
Yeah, right?
I can feel like the hair on the back of my neck, like standing up. I'm like, what's gonna happen?
It's like one of those like Tales from the Crypt joints or like Twilight Zone things, but in like
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Rob just
That was
says,
amazing.
Simon, you need to narrate stories. You're sitting on a gold mine with your voice, and then trance and stories.
Look, I'm in works
Or
with
even
Simon.
voice acting.
We're already Facebook friends. I'm gonna get Simon my stuff. We're gonna help Simon out with us.
Yeah.
Too right, brother.
I want to be Facebook friends with Simon.
Well,
very, very welcome. Very welcome.
There's an entrance fee, JJ. So you can Venmo me.
You're still in the outer circle. You've got to be in the circle.
Oh, after all this time, I thought I was in
Marty's
the circle.
on the outer circle now. Marty's on the outer circle.
I'm so hurt, Amy. I'm so hurt.
Sorry.
So hurt.
Simon, thank
Sorry.
you so much.
Yes,
Like,
Oh.
man,
My pleasure.
when I forgot you were coming on the show, and when I was reminded, I was like, oh God, oh yeah, let's go.
Thank you.
And he came by my work today. All he could tell me is how great this was going to be. And he totally did not tell me how good it was going to be. Like, this was amazing.
If you look at my little in my little white thing here, it says "Big Simon fan."
Yeah, I think
that's
we all are.
not a lie. That's not a lie.
Thank you very much.
Right, so we'll just do a quick game. So this one we haven't had for a while.
It's a tame version.
This is a tame
Yeah.
version, but it's
We want
shot in
to
the dark.
be nice because Simon's here, and I don't want to show Simon how
We can't bring
truly
Simon down to our
vulgar and
level.
terrible
And he's
we
a
really
very
are.
respectable gentleman.
He is a
Class
gentleman.
act.
I'll try to behave.
So we'll do a
His
shot in the
stash,
dark.
super dapper.
I know, and
It
I'm
is,
like,
yeah,
man, that's
it
what
is.
it
I'm like,
is.
I've been playing with mine throughout the episode. Like, how do I do that with mine? That's so awesome.
He's got the tash going on. So this is called Shot in the Dark. It's just a general trivia. It's just a guess of what the answer is going to be, basically. It's just a few quick trivia before we go.
And yes, Simon, hopefully we'll be back again.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Oh,
Definitely.
Thank you.
Right, so the first one is what percentage, and I've just got these randomly, so if they are bad, it's not my fault.
well, it has been a while since we played this one. I like this.
What percentage of men wash their hands after going to the toilet?
2.
1.
You're saying 1.
I say 75.
75?
Maybe 20. Let's go 20%.
20%?
Kerry?
Yeah, you guys don't like going for pee-pee with washing your hands.
I cook, so I wash my hands constantly.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
it. That's it.
Simon?
I think I did it on the nail there, actually.
Tui says 10.
I think
Joanne
we've all
says
done it, guys.
89. Matt says
In like
33.
an airport or something.
Danny says
And you
3%.
have to have time to wash your hands.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. 89, 33.
I'm gonna go
3.
20.
You go 20? It
3%.
is.
What did Simon say?
I can't
I'd
remember.
say 50%.
50%?
50%. Okay.
Oh, I think someone nearly hit it on the head.
What
Or
is it?
someone might have done. I've forgotten what everybody says. So it is actually 37%.
Wow.
Ed was oh no,
Jennifer
Jennifer.
hit it on the head.
Wow, 37%.
Jennifer was
Yeah.
100% right.
Well, it's not fair when you cheat on a phone.
Compared
We
to
don't know she's-
61%.
I'm only teasing Jen.
Women are only 61%. Not women are only 61%. So
Oh, I have women's bathroom photos that I took that can show that women are dirtier than
Women's
dudes.
bathrooms are just
100%,
and men's
yeah.
bathrooms are clean.
Well, no,
No,
well done,
men's
Tim.
bathrooms are horrid.
Oh, not
Yeah.
over here. Usually the men's room is cleaner.
Oh yeah.
I've had to
Yeah,
use the men's
room is
room here a
cleaner.
couple of times. It's actually cleaner than the women's room.
Poor
Oh, not,
Simon.
not,
All
not
right.
in England. In England, it's always the men's. smell.
Oh, I don't know.
So what do we got next? What do we got
So
next?
the next one is, which illness do British doctors treat most commonly? British doctors treat most commonly. Which illness?
Flu.
Yeah, it's going to be some sort of fluey virus, isn't it?
Fluey virus.
I know
Is
the
that
answer.
your wait? Is that a real
Yeah.
answer? A fluey virus? Okay, I love that.
Just a
Simon, what do
common
you think, buddy?
Well, I reckon it could be respiratory. Yeah, something respiratory, really.
Okay.
Although we are a nation
Makes
of
sense.
very big eaters, heavy smokers, heavy drinkers.
Mm.
So, it could be any of those, really, couldn't it?
You're talking to a guy who's looking at a thing of pretzel rods and fucking like gummy bears right now and a beer and a yeah.
I have chicken tenders waiting.
I think
Oh,
there's-
lovely. That's.
I think I'm coming to JJ's for dinner.
I'm just going to turn the lights on, guys.
Yes, absolutely, sir.
I
I'm going to
think
go
there's
with
some Googling going on in the chat. There's some
Diarrhea.
Googling.
Jennifer. Yeah.
Denny says
Depression.
Jennifer's on the
Bad
radar.
teeth. Actually, if you look at the show, the British have nicer teeth than the Americans, or at least on my part.
Mine either.
I'm gonna go with AIDS.
That's
Yeah.
random.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
Yeah,
probably
it's
a
a
problem,
I
right?
said
I
she
bet it
was
used to be. I bet it used to be. Because it was a big problem at one point, wasn't it? Weather. I thought it meant weather as in the actual illness. It is
82%.
actually depression. Each year, 10% of women and 4% of men suffer from clinical depression.
That's
Oh,
it.
wow.
Over there
Yeah.
in the UK, it's
That's
4% of men. What?
Don't you guys have a lot of fog?
And it
I'm
rains
s-
a lot, right?
I'm 6% of depression in America right here.
That's depressing. Fog is depressing.
I thought you said something else, Mom.
It was really foggy here on Thursday.
I told you I was going to behave.
We're only teasing, Jen.
I can't Google when I'm on YouTube. Oh, okay, Jennifer, I'll give you that one.
Yeah,
I'll give
Oh,
you
we
that.
were only teasing anyway. Come on, Jen.
But yeah, depression. It's quite sad, really. You know, it's depression, but
Disqualified Jeff and
You can so Google when you're on YouTube. I can do it right now.
all
I
right, go
can Google.
two
I
more.
got my phone.
All right, two more here.
Two more. Should be quite easy. What is the largest reptile in the world?
oh, snake. The really big.
No, isn't that dragon thing?
Komodo
Dinosaur.
dragon.
That's it.
Crocodile.
Thank you.
Anaconda. No.
Largest reptile in the
Is
world.
it anaconda?
Dinosaur.
Anaconda
Snake.
The snake.
Don't let it around J-Lo. It'll eat her.
Huge.
Simon, what's your answer, bud?
I think Amy's probably hit it the nail, actually. The anaconda is a very, very long reptile, isn't it?
That's
Although
very fair, yes.
it's long, but could it be a crocodile?
That's what I'm thinking. Crocodile.
Crocodile.
Mm.
Komodo
Next
dragon.
Komodo
Jennifer doesn't know her reptiles.
Oh, I
you've
just
lost
thought
on this
of
one,
that
Jennifer.
when I saw that. I was like, blue whale.
Blue whale.
I love that she said, I don't know my reptiles. I think that's adorable. Yay.
It is actually the saltwater crocodile.
Ah,
Oh.
well done, Simon. Well done.
All right, last
Well
one
done,
then.
Joanne.
This is for you Americans. On average,
He
how
says
many?
it so disgustedly good.
You American.
I love America, so on average,
We'll
how
remember
many-
that, Tom. We'll remember
we sure
that.
will, yeah.
I won't be going there twice.
We'll
if I didn't.
remember.
Wait till you see the dress we put you in next.
Food.
Yes. Yeah, we're going for food. Okay. On average, how many guests are invited to a wedding in the USA? On
Ooh.
average,
You have a lot.
how
200.
many guests?
Yeah.
I agree with Mom on that. I'd say 200 too.
200?
I think about 300.
Like 100 each side, kind of.
300 to 500 easily.
Really?
Cheap.
Yeah.
I only invited 50.
I'll say 200.
I'm
Yeah.
saying two.
I think it's about.
Simon, what are you going with?
Well, I do remember going to a wedding in Pittsburgh way back in 1987, and it was
Great,
half,
I was
half
born.
American, half British, half American. There was at least 180 there.
Hell yeah.
180?
Yeah.
Give that. Danny's 50 to 200. That's quite vague, Danny. But
Yeah, wait, no, you
Yeah,
can't
that's
do
too
it.
big of a
Means then he's always right if it's not
Yeah.
there or there. He's right somewhere.
Indian weddings are like crazy.
Indian weddings are like thousands.
Yeah.
They invite the whole country pretty much.
Weddings are
And they get
expensive.
the elephants.
And it also depends on if it's a destination wedding or not. But okay, so
we have a wedding barn here, and it's $10,000 for the day.
Whew.
What?
Just to rent a
Mama, where are
barn.
you making that money?
Yeah.
Not me, not my barn. My barn's got cows in it. I'm good.
That's all right.
Oh, I thought it was yours. My bad.
cute too. He's so cute. When you're coming down from the stairs, he was like, "Where's more milk, Mama?"
Yeah, I saw that. I thought
He's
it
all
was
hopping
nice.
around.
Oh.
75. Okay, so well, the closest person, nobody got it bang on. The closest was actually you, Simon. It's 178. That's
Wow.
on average. That's quite fair. You got the
That is
article.
That's close to 200.
Close to 200. Yes, that's a lot of guess. How many did we have?
So do we all kind of win then?
No, there are no
That's
winners.
close to 200.
There's
Yeah.
never any
there's a
winners.
disappointment.
We all lose.
The show can't win. The guests can win. The chat
Yeah.
can win. The show doesn't win.
Yeah. When you're part of the show, you never win. We're not allowed
Yeah,
to
no.
win.
Just ask Marty.
Yeah.
I win.
I mean,
every
unless
Friday.
you're Marty's
I'm always
mom.
here now.
I guess Marty's mom really won out on all this.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so yeah, that's all we've got time for tonight. But So next week we are going to be doing ghost ships,
Flying
Flying Dutchman and all that.
Oh,
So
yes.
Nice.
it'll be a nice show next week.
Johnny Depp.
I will put all of Simon's information down below after the show, so you can
mean
check all that.
I will.
Amy probably will, because I'll be asleep because I'm up early. But yeah, please check out his book on Amazon, and check him out on YouTube as well. For more stories. And once again, Simon, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. It's
This
great.
is amazing.
We love
Thank
you. We love you, sir.
We cannot wait to have
The
you
pleasure.
back.
The pleasure really is all mine. Thank you, Tom, for kindly inviting me. It's lovely to share this time with you folks, and thank you once again.
Anytime. All right, guys, have a cracking weekend, and we will see you next week.
We out.
Bye, guys.
See you later.
Stay spooky.